The November election is not a normal election. Donald Trump as a candidate is not a normal candidate. Historian Ruth Ben-Ghiat reminds us that this election is not about policy. It's a referendum on what kind of political system we will have in America. Democracy or autocracy. And that is why so many prominent Republicans who know the stakes are supporting the Democratic ticket in 2024, and why never-Trump Republicans and traditional conservatives must protect the Republic by voting Democrat just this once. You don't even have to tell anyone you've done it.
How do you beat authoritarians? You have unity of the opposition. Now, in America, we don't have a multi-party system, but we have Republicans who, in increasing numbers, are willing to cross the line. These people deserve our support and our respect. It is not easy for them to be out there giving permission to other Republicans to vote for Democrats for the first time in their lives, when they have also been conditioned by Trump to see Democrats as a political enemy. But it's very necessary to support this, because this is not an election about policy or tax cuts. This is a referendum on what kind of political system we want for America. Will it be democracy or autocracy? Trump and MAGA are all too clear about the model of leadership they want to impose on us. Trump is constantly praising Xi Jinping, a communist dictator, for ruling with an iron fist. That's not who we are. So crossing the line is the key to putting country over party and presenting a united front for this election. It is not asking Republicans to become Democrats. It is asking them to vote Democrat on this occasion because it is the right choice for the country at this time.
We find ourselves at a pivotal moment in our nation's history. As we approach the election, the future of our democracy, our values, our very identity as a nation are at stake. Among the candidates running for president, one name stands out, a name that has already left an indelible mark on the country: the disgraced former president Donald J. Trump. So I want to speak candidly about the dangers posed by the possibility of a Trump second term, and what that will mean for you, because this is not about political disagreements or policy differences. It's about the survival of our democratic institutions and the preservation of the fundamental principles that have guided the country for over 2 centuries. Donald Trump's presidency from 2017 through 2021 was marked by unprecedented attacks on the very fabric of our democracy. So to understand the dangers of a second Trump term, we must first look back at the lessons of his first term. That was his dictatorship. So when he speaks of being a dictator on day one, he's lying. Look at the long-lasting impact that his first presidency had on this country. And perhaps the most alarming aspect of Trump's presidency was his relentless assault on democratic norms, authoritarianism. Trump repeatedly sought to undermine the rule of law, erode the independence of the judiciary, and dismantle the checks and balances that safeguard the government. His disregard for the foundational principles was exemplified in his attempts to politicize institutions like the Department of Justice, which he treated as his own personal law firm, rather than as an independent body designed to serve the people as it is now. A second term would undoubtedly embolden Trump to go even further in his disregard for democratic norms. And without the prospect of re-election, he would be free from any political restraints, leaving our institutions vulnerable to further erosion. His pattern of rejecting accountability, dismissing oversight, attacking anyone who challenges his authority would become even more explicit. In his second term, Trump would have the opportunity to consolidate power in ways that would be difficult, if not impossible, to reverse. One of the gravest dangers posed by Donald Trump is his assault on the integrity of our electoral system. After losing the 2020 election, he refused to concede. He launched baseless claims of widespread voter fraud. He attempted to overturn the results. Just think about that. He's not some troll in a basement somewhere. He is the former president, refusing to leave the White House, refusing to accept the outcome of a free and fair election, which culminated in the violent insurrection on January 6, 2021, a direct attack on our democracy that left the nation shaken. The insurrection was not an isolated event, though. It was the culmination of Trump's years-long effort to sow doubt in the electoral process. And if he were to win a second term, there is every reason to believe that he would continue to undermine the legitimacy of our elections, especially if the results do not go in his favor. The very idea of peaceful transitions of power, a cornerstone of American democracy, would be under threat. This is a risk that the US simply cannot afford to take when the world is watching. Another profound danger posed by a second Trump term is his attack on truth itself. Throughout his first term, Trump displayed a disturbing disregard for facts and truth. He spread misinformation and disinformation, using social media to amplify false claims, which culminated in a dangerous environment where millions of Americans have become convinced of conspiracies because of these lies that threatens to tear the country apart, all because of one man. The erosion of truth, the rise of misinformation have deep and lasting consequences. I just want to interrupt myself for a moment to ask you to support me and independent journalism by becoming a member of this YouTube channel. Click join just below. It starts at just $3 a month, and it would be really helpful because at the moment things have never been more complex and more dangerous with the rise of fascism and the fall of US democracy. So I'm going to do my best to put these messages and this analysis out every single day, but I really need your help to do that. If you don't want to join the YouTube channel and you're already on Patreon, you can sign up for my Patreon as well at patreon.com/5minutenews. Thank you. When the President of the United States normalizes lies, it weakens public trust in government and in the media and in science. And this was tragically evident during the COVID-19 pandemic, when Trump's downplaying of the virus, rejection of scientific advice, the promotion of unproven treatments contributed to 1 million unnecessary deaths and confusion in the country. In a second term, Trump's continued assault on the truth would further erode our ability to make informed decisions as a society, making it harder to confront the challenges that we are likely to face, from public health crises to climate change. He thinks climate change is a hoax, or at least he says that it's a hoax, and yet it's coming for all of us. The danger of a second Trump term extends beyond our borders. Trump's erratic and unpredictable approach to foreign policy weakened our alliances, emboldened our adversaries. It undermined America's standing on the world stage. His abandonment of long-standing international agreements, cozying up to authoritarian leaders like Putin and Kim Jong, sent a clear message that Trump is more interested in personal relationships with strongmen than in upholding values of democracy and human rights. A second Trump term would further isolate the United States from the global community, as our allies have lost trust in our commitment to international cooperation. In a world where the threat of climate change and terrorism and geopolitical instability demand collective action, a retreat from global leadership would leave the world far more vulnerable to conflict and chaos. Trump's erratic decision-making could lead to dangerous miscalculations, escalating tensions with adversaries, and threatening global security. He cannot be trusted. You know, I've always been of the opinion that the human race will at some point wipe itself out. It won't be a meteor hitting the planet like the way the dinosaurs were wiped out. I think that we will end up doing it to ourselves, and somebody like Donald Trump is the reason why. And I think that he has demonstrated that his insecurity and his personality is the last type that you would want in the White House. His presidency also represented a rollback of hard-won civil rights and social progress. His administration actively worked to dismantle protections for marginalized communities, from rolling back LGBTQ+ rights to undermining the rights of immigrants, and from limiting women's access to reproductive health care and stoking racial divisions. Under his leadership, white supremacists felt emboldened and hate crimes surged across the country. If Trump were to win a second term, these efforts to roll back civil rights would likely accelerate. The federal judiciary, already reshaped by Trump's appointments, could become even more hostile to civil liberties. Protections for vulnerable communities could be further eroded, making it harder to reverse the damage in the future. The hard-fought gains for equality, justice, and human dignity would be at a greater risk than ever before, because he doesn't know what any of those things mean. He has no empathy. He cares only for himself. At its core, the most dangerous threat posed by a second Trump term is the very future of our democracy. Trump's authoritarian tendencies, his disdain for the rule of law, his refusal to accept electoral defeat are all red flags for what could come if he's given another 4 years in power. The consequences of unchecked power, the erosion of our institutions, the normalization of anti-democratic behavior could push our democracy to breaking point. This election is not just about a candidate or a political party, it's about the survival of our democratic system. We cannot afford to take this threat lightly. The dangers of a second Trump term are real, and they are profound. This is a critical moment in our history. And it's up to all of us to defend our democracy by ensuring that Donald Trump does not return to the White House. In the Democrats, Kamala Harris is positioned as the antidote to Donald Trump's dangerous and poisonous offering. She champions unity and diversity, focusing on bringing people together, in stark contrast to Trump's divisive language, which targeted immigrants and racial minorities and his political opponents. Kamala Harris advocates for policies that uplift marginalized communities, embracing multiculturalism and social equity. Harris emphasizes the importance of truth and science, particularly evident during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a former prosecutor and senator, she has been vocal about criminal justice reform, systemic racism, and equal rights. Kamala Harris seeks to address these societal issues through reform and through dialogue. She's seen as a proponent of restoring respect for democratic norms and institutions, which Trump's presidency frequently challenged. Her belief in strengthening these institutions aligns with a desire for stable, respectful governance, counteracting Trump's confrontational and authoritarian tone. Working people who vote Republican traditionally have been voting against their own self-interest by supporting policies and politicians that prioritize the wealthiest Americans and large corporations over the needs of everyday workers. And despite campaign promises of job creation and economic improvement, Republican policies have always resulted in tax cuts for the rich, reduced labor protections, weakened health care access, and stagnant wages. These policies disproportionately benefit the affluent while leaving working-class families with fewer resources and fewer protections. By continuing to support Donald Trump, who advocates for deregulation, reduced social safety nets, and anti-union measures, many MAGA Republicans inadvertently undermine their own economic well-being. If you've been voting Republican and you're still poor, ask yourself why, and do the right thing in November. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.